It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Mike Novotny, and we're going to be discussing his brand new book, 3 Words That Will Change Your Life, The Secret to Experiencing the Joy of God's Presence. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shaun, thanks so much for having me. I got to tell you, on my little sketch pad here, I put your name, Shaun T, and my brain immediately went back to those workout tapes of the really ripped guy. So that's my visual of you, except I heard you have 10 children. So I'm just picturing a really ripped workout guy with a gaggle of children 10. Around his feet.
Yeah,
is that a good visual?
Well, I'd like to think it's semi-close. I'm probably somewhere in between Dad Bod Guy and Shaun T. So maybe put me in the middle of that spectrum, and that's going to be what I look like. And I'm much more Caucasian than Shaun T is, so just got to point that out as well.
Fair. Okay, I'll adjust my expectations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I like to start off every conversation with the author's origin story. So for the people encountering Mike Novotny for the very first time in our conversation today, what are some things they should know about you?
I like your phrase, origin story. That makes me feel like a superhero. So thanks for
when they're recasting for Avengers like 15, you'll be right up there.
Yeah, I've never thought about my origin story. Background of me, I'm kind of a guy that likes to do different things as the years pass. My wife gives me some grief that I get on some kick, and then 18 months later, all the gear and purchases are in the garage that I don't care about anymore. So I grew up playing soccer. Then I got into like ping pong competitively. I started studying karate, then roller hockey, then ice hockey, then show choir, then tennis. Then someone challenged me to a dance-off at a wedding, so I studied hip-hop dancing and break dancing for a year. I started running Tough Mudders and marathons. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a married guy. My wife, Kim, and I have been together for 16 years. So I married my first ever girlfriend, which is pretty cool. And we have 2 daughters who are 11 and 10. So they're at that prime age. I'm sure you can relate as a dad when, they think I'm the best and they don't like boys just yet. So
it's always a good time before they like boys.
So I don't have to deal with that. And last thing I would say is I love reading books, all kinds of books. I just devour all kinds of content, mostly nonfiction stuff, but ministry, Christian, spiritual, believers, atheists. I just love learning. So that's probably a good way to describe me. I love to learn things, stretch myself intellectually, and hopefully pour that out in my teaching and ministry.
You're probably the first guest I've ever had on the show that has any kind of a background or history in competitive ping pong. So what's the one life lesson you learned from your time playing competitive ping pong?
Yeah, once I was at this tournament and I saw this guy who had an official ping pong jumpsuit. And and my life lesson would be, if you ever find yourself across the table from a guy who came in a ping pong jumpsuit, just get back in your car and go home. Yeah, God humbled me pretty quickly.
I'm intimidated by the guy who shows up with the ping pong racket like in the custom case, but to have your own ping pong jumpsuit, that's a whole new level of intimidation right there.
It really was. I had the case, but I did definitely not have the jumpsuit, and the final score proved it to be true.
And I think right there, it's all about the mental game. So if you want to dominate somebody, show up next time with your ping pong paddle in the case, with the jumpsuit, and you'll be in their head even before you have that first serve or volley.
Oh, maybe I will do that. I don't have the skills anymore, but maybe I could get a velour jumpsuit and see how things take.
There you go. Well, if you get on that path, be sure to post it on Instagram so we can all see what it looked like.
I'm sure the comments would be interesting.
We've gotten a bit of your origin story, so let's transition now into the story behind the book. I find often authors go down the path of crafting a message because of a need they saw in their own life or in the life of their family or friends, or even sometimes it's a problem that they want to address that they're seeing throughout culture. So in terms of this book, this message, what first sent you down the path of bringing this to life?
Yeah, thanks for that question. looking back, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago. I think it started as an intellectual thing for me as I was reading the Bible. And then it turned into this deeply emotional, spiritual thing in my own life. I was reading Psalm 73, and it was just curious to me that, if you know the background, this guy named Asaph is super envious and bitter and frustrated with God because these other people who don't love God seem to have easier and better lives than he does. And kind of near to the end of the psalm, he makes this transition where this light bulb goes on and he realizes, oh yeah, but I have God. They might have a good life, a healthy life. Maybe they don't have struggles like I do, but they don't have God, and I have God. And that was like this little seed, I think, that was planted in my heart to think that God must be better than all the riches, all the money, all the health, which I kind of knew on paper. But in emotional practice, to see that at the center of the Bible is this key theme that God is right here with his people. And God is so glorious and so wonderful and so beautiful and so interesting and so captivating that he makes a hot cup of coffee in the morning, or, a belly laugh from one of your little kids, or a runner's high, or a good book, or your best friendship, or sex, or a good vacation. Like, until our brains can think of God as so much better than the best things of this life, then we're going to be a little frustrated and bitter. But if at the end of every day we have God through Jesus, then we've kind of discovered Asaph's secret of the joy of God's presence.
One of the things I found fascinating with what you talk about in the book is showing us that how we think about God, how we talk about God in terms of, is he here with us right now, or is he going to be here in the future? So it's kind of this balance of, both time and proximity, and maybe terms that we're not actively thinking about. What we say, how we act, I think reveals what's going on in our head from a worldview perspective and the reality of what we're thinking. I feel like we don't spend enough time really digging in and focusing on what we're saying or thinking when that stuff begins to come out in our lives. So for this kind of middle part of the interview, I want to go through some of the sort of themes that you cover in the book. So, when we say that God will be here, what are we actually implying when we think or say that God will be here?
Yeah, I like that question too. Can I actually back up for 1 second and insert something really important?
Man. Go for it.
Yeah. So the three words, maybe I'll give this away to your listeners here. The book's called 3 Words That Will Change Your Life. So the first word is God. And I say that intentionally, not God or God. Like, as much joy and passion and energy and excitement, leave the caps lock on God. The second word is, not will be or might be or used to be, but is right now. And the final word is here, not over there with those people, but right here with a person like me. So God is here are the 3 words that can change your life. And I think the really practical part about the book is that while all of us, at least who follow Jesus, would probably agree that, God is better than the best things of this life, it's really difficult to feel the weight of that. And so what I wanted to do in the early chapter, the early parts of the book, was to help people figure out how can our emotional response to God increase. So I kind of picture it as, everyone has this idea of God in their hearts, like a little balloon. And what I want to do is teach people how to stick a little needle into that balloon and, blow that thing up until the thought of God becomes so good that it fills and satisfies your heart and makes you okay with life no matter what happens. So that's where it starts. And honestly, if we don't start there, if you don't realize how great God is, then whether he's here or not won't make much difference. If you're struggling with your marriage or you're diagnosed with cancer, and I said, well, but Joe is here. And Joe is like this annoying guy from your work or the neighbor you try to avoid when you're getting the mail. His presence won't help you very much. So we have to think of God in such a profound, glorious way that if I told you, yeah, you do have cancer. Yeah, your marriage might not make it. Yeah, the car does need a $4,000 repair, but God is here. If we can start there, that makes all the difference in the world as we go through all the ups and downs of life.
In terms of whether or not we're ready to believe that or ready to receive that fact that God is here, God is in the midst of our circumstances or our particular situation. What are some of the reasons that we struggle to believe that, we struggle to embrace it? Is it merely an identity issue? Is it that we're feeling, well, we're not good enough. God knows who I really am, so there's no way he would want to be here with me right now. Like, what are some of the lies that hold us back from really embracing that?
Two of them really jump out to me. And the first one's pretty logical, right? Because we can't see God, it's easy to forget that he is God. So I can see my wife's smiling face when I walk through the door, and it makes me really happy to see that. I can't see God's face shining on me and giving me peace, so it's really easy to forget that. I can go on vacation and feel rest or see the Grand Canyon in its majesty, but I can't see that God is way more glorious and he gives a better, longer lasting rest. So the first problem is really being able to, in the book I call it seeking God until you see him. It's just leveraging the power of logic to think, wow, this is beautiful, but God has to be even more beautiful. Or, wow, this game was thrilling, but seeing God is going to be even more thrilling. So I think the fact that God's, Paul gets this in 2 Corinthians 4. He says, we don't lose heart or lose hope because we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. So I think that is like this habit of teaching our hearts to seek the invisible God. I have a whole chapter in this called This, which is leveraging like these really good moments in life to think more of God and actually see him with the eyes of faith. And then the second lie that you mentioned, you're spot on. Let me go back to family. If I say something rude to my wife after work today, she might, quietly kind of sneak off to the room and want to put some distance between me and her. So here I am standing in the kitchen and she's not there anymore because, lack of love and sin tends to push people apart. And so when we sin, it's kind of natural to assume, because we can't see God, that he probably took a step away. The smile probably faded from his face. I gave in to that temptation again, and I said I wouldn't. I know the commandments to love everyone, and I didn't. And that guilt and shame can easily make us assume that God must be pretty distant from us. He must be over there with people who didn't make the sinful choices that I did. So those are the two big lies that I want to combat with the book, that God is so glorious and good, even if you can't see it just yet. And that because Jesus made a full payment for our sin on the cross, because it really is finished, that God is right here with his people, delighting in them. His face is shining upon them. And that's what gives us joy and peace.
And Mike, I want to jump back to what I asked a little bit earlier, kind of that idea of, God will be here. I think so often people have this heaven-minded perspective where, their proximity to their relationship to God, it makes a difference for the future, for when they actually go to heaven to be with Jesus, so to speak. Why do people sometimes get stuck in that kind of a perspective where their heavenly mindedness does them no earthly good right now?
Can you imagine how terrifying it would be if that was true? Like, this glorious, powerful, loving, accepting God.
After I'm
30
gone.
years from now, when you die, he's gonna be here. But for now, good luck.
That's right. In the meantime, I will endure.
Exactly. There'd be no peace or no joy. But when you think of some of the scriptures that we love, I heard on the YouVersion Bible app last year, the number one most highlighted, underlined verse was Philippians 4:6. Don't be anxious about anything. That classic chapter, rejoice always. There's a peace that goes beyond understanding. I've learned the secret of being content. And you know what truth pops up right in the middle of that chapter? Paul says, the Lord is near. So that was his secret. I mean, he's sitting under house arrest when he writes that. You read the whole book of Philippians and there's drama happening in the church and these two ladies that he loves are fighting. But Paul had learned the secret of being content because he believed that God, not just when he died, but while he was living, was right there in his presence. Psalm 23, David says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. I can walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I might be surrounded by my enemies, but God, right now, you're with me. And if you are so glorious and good, then, my enemies, these problems are small compared to the goodness and the glory of the God whose face I seek and I see each day.
In terms of this idea of really getting a hold of, that we find our full satisfaction in God, and that God's love is really better than anything else we can experience in a practical way as we're reading God's word, as we're kind of walking out our faith journey. Like, how does this show up differently? How do we begin to see things differently in the word, in our day-to-day, as we kind of embrace these ideas? Because I feel like some of it is our minds are being renewed to accept that this isn't too good to be true. It's our present reality and we can live in it. So I guess maybe how do things start to come alive in a different way as we start to understand this?
That's a really practical question. I love that. I'm sure most people wouldn't disagree with our conversation at this point, but that's a great question. And the day-to-day, how do you do it? For me, kind of the practice that has changed my daily way of thinking is trying to leverage as many good moments of the day and as many bad moments of the day to help me think of God's presence. So let's say I have a good moment. So last night I come home, I had a couple soccer games. I got home about 11 p.m. My kids are both asleep. I kind of sneak into my youngest daughter's bedroom. She's 10 years old. Her name is Maya. And she's addicted to sloths right now. She's going through a phase. And she's, her little pigtails are sitting on this big sloth stuffed pillow. She's surrounded by, I think, 18 sloth stuffed animals. Her little feet are kind of wrapped up in her sloth blankets. And I just look at her, and she's so beautiful to me. And the affection and the love that I feel for her is just so, there aren't words for that as a parent. But instead of just thinking, oh, what a sweet moment, let me go brush my teeth and go to bed, I take my mind the next step to think, wow, how beautiful must God be if he's more beautiful than my daughter? If God created her and he gave me eyes to see and emotions that would feel, if he put these chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine in God made me that way so that I could experience beauty and love and closeness and affection. But this is just like a 10-year-old kid. Imagine how much better God will be. And if I feel this love for her and I'm just like a sinful 39-year-old guy and God is a perfect father, oh my goodness, it's insane to me. Like, how loved are we if God's love is a billion times better than the love we feel for our families or our closest friends or our children? So I find that in my own heart, the more I pause and really lean into those good moments of my day, might be the taste of bacon. It might be how I feel on a beautiful day when I'm out for a run. It might just be, it's the weekend and I get to relax. No matter what your story, you have really good moments, and they can turn into these little trampolines that get your thoughts and your heart up into the presence of God, where you just think by comparison, wow, God is even better than this. This good moment's going to end in 5 seconds, 2 minutes, 1 week, but God is eternal. His love is unfailing, and I can enjoy him every moment of every day until I really see him face to face.
Well, for some of us, it might be hard to fathom that God's love is better than bacon. I'm going to trust you that that's a true reality.
We walk by faith and not by sight, because
right.
That is difficult. I'll admit that.
I think with the sort of message that you share in this book, that once people really get a hold of it, they're going to experience some major internal transformation. And I think when something really rocks our world, we want to all of a sudden start sharing it with others. And obviously one way, you can share this with others is to get an extra copy of the book and give that to a friend, give that to a family member. But in terms of a way for somebody to succinctly communicate the message of the book, maybe think of sticky statements, something that could make it portable for them in conversation. If somebody wants to share the message of this book with a friend, what's an effective way for them to express that?
I'm not sure if anyone would be bold enough to do this goofy exercise, but if you could just stand in front of a mirror and practice saying the word God until the whole expression of your face and your body actually reflects like this is the best thing in the world. Yeah, I picture a girl from our church got engaged last Sunday. And, when she holds up that hand and shows off the ring and you just see it on her face, like, this just happened. Like, if we could train ourselves every time we use the name of God to think of it, to not get numb to his name, but actually think of God as glorious as he is. I would love for people to practice that. So when they say, not, yeah, but God is here. No, God. Like, are you serious? God. Oh my goodness. God is with us. I think if we could, in the Lord's Prayer and in the 10 Commandments, don't misuse the name of the Lord your God, but we pray, hallowed be your name. So it's just about training ourselves. And, with some time and practice, this becomes almost instinctual to think, oh my goodness, God. That one simple word, so obvious, it's all over the Bible. God, that sacred, holy, wonderful name, that kind of God is with me. So I just encourage people to rethink how they spell, how they say, how they express, and hopefully then how they feel about those three incredible letters, G-O-D.
Yeah, I think if you're going to practice writing out before you practice in the mirror what you're going to say, the word God to be all caps and like underlined with stars around it, because you're really going to bring it. You're going to say God's name with an enthusiasm and pizzazz that you've never expressed before.
Yeah, absolutely. It cracked me up. So they made an audio version of this book. It's on Audible. You can find it. And I didn't read it, but they had a professional voice actor through the publishing house did. And I didn't realize what a difficult book it would be to read, because essentially the premise of the book is turning God and God into God. And it's everywhere. So this poor guy is having to try to express that every time it comes up for hundreds or thousands of times in the book. And I had emailed him and I said, you probably hated me after you were done reading this book, because it's pretty much based on a bunch of homonyms, words that are spelled the same, but they sound and are expressed so differently. So yeah, if I had to summarize it down to one or two quick little things, that would be it. Just God, seek him, learn to see him in such a glorious way that he ends up satisfying your soul.
Mike, when you think of a reader getting to the final page of 3 words that will change your life, what message do you hope they've heard loud and clear throughout the book? Think of it, if they take away one thing, what's that one thing you hope they remember for the rest of their days?
2 words, holy, here. God is holy. He's not normal, average, mundane. You never yawn when you see the face of God. He is better than the best experiences of this day, this week, this life. God is holy. And because what Jesus did was so complete through his life and death and resurrection, that God who is so amazing is right here in the room with me right now. And that changes everything. I don't have to be afraid. No one can touch that. No one can take that away. You can get fired. You can get dumped. You can get divorced. You can get sick. You can lose everything. And yet you'll still have everything that matters if you have a God who is holy and a God who is right here with you.
I love that the whole main premise of the book hinges on 3 words that you don't tell us till we read the book. And then the main takeaway hinges on 2 words. That's great. Do you use a lot of numbers in your sermon titles?
No joke. I came into my office today and there was a book on my shelf. Uh-huh. And the subtitle of the book was 2 words that will change your life. And the author was Mr. Joel Osteen. So I wanted to one-up Joel in his...
Man, maybe...
I think someone was playing a joke on me.
Maybe that's just a Christian publishing secret, and we're just starting to see the patterns that others have already seen, and we're only finally being clued in.
That could be it. So you can publish 4 words that will change your life next year. We'll see how it goes.
I'll keep that in mind. I'm not sure if we start getting to 5, 6, 7 words that will change your life, we might stress people out. So there's probably a cap in there somewhere. I'm not sure what that is yet, though. Mike, in terms of people wanting to connect with you, your church, your ministry, find out more about the book, where are some of the places we can find you on the web? Yeah.
So timeofgrace.org is the media ministry that I'm with. So lots of my writing. You can find more information about the book there, messages. You could Google The Core, Appleton, Wisconsin, and you'd find local messages here that I do for my ministry. Or on Instagram, if people want to connect with there, at Pastor Mike Novotny is the best way to find me.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Mike and pick up your own copy of the book. So we'll have that all linked up for you over at shauntabatt.com. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Mike Novotny. Once again, our book today was 3 words that will change your life, the secret to experiencing the joy of God's presence. For more on Mike and the book, a great place to start is timeofgrace.org/3 words, and that is the number 3, not the word 3, just to be clear. And Mike, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing with us today. It's been a great pleasure and an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks, Shaun.